he met Abraham Lincoln through a general who Lincoln appointed into the Freedmen's Bureau, and he was also a general in the American Union Army. This guy's name was General something Hitchcock, who, as quiet as it's kept, is actually the great-great-great-grandfather of another black man named Alfred Hitchcock that they perpetuate to us as it was a white dude. Alfred Hitchcock was the guy who put Rod Serling on with the occult shit, and then Rod Serling and took what Hitchcock was doing and then flipped that into what we now today call the Twilight Zone type of stuff. So again, this is Randolph's influence. Lincoln, for a long time, Lincoln was the son of a Moor and a Caucasian woman whose name I think was Nancy Hanks, but she basically had some black blood in her too. Anyway, Lincoln was not a good speechwriter at first. He didn't really know how to really get down with it. So General Hitchcock, he said, well, you need to meet my man Randolph. He hooked him up with Randolph, and then Randolph basically started writing all the Lincoln speeches. It's the Gettysburg Address and all of that. That's Randolph. Okay. You could find this in a rare book by the Rosicrucians called The Rosicrucian History of Pascal Beverly Randolph, and he gets deep into this stuff. They even got color pictures in him in there. Anyway, Lincoln decided he was already catching hell because his vice president, Hannibal Hamlin, was darker than me. Lincoln, I got a derogatory picture of Lincoln. He was darker than me too, because again, all of these niggas was black. Okay. Lincoln, but he was having problems with those Federalist albino Caucasians that were in the federal government now trying to oust him out. So what he decided to do was create a situation where he could basically put them on blast. So what he decided to do to maintain what little land that we had, he came out with a thing called the greenbacks. And the greenbacks were basically a new form of money that would put gold and silver back behind it, because they've been trying to set up a central bank in the United States from back then. Okay? So as he was doing that, he was having trouble. So he went to Randolph and asked Randolph if there were certain things, spiritual things he could do. So Randolph said, I can't really do nothing for you, man, until you really accept the fact that this spiritualism is the way to go. Lincoln said, well, I accept that. And then Randolph was like, all right, cool. So then what they decided to do was they created a little secret society amongst themselves. That secret society in history is called the Peerless Three. The Peerless Three was Lincoln, Randolph, and Hitchcock. And these three guys, basically, all of the stuff that we read about the Gettysburg Address and the American Union and the strategy and all of that came from Randolph, really. Because what a lot of people also don't know is that at this time, right around the time the Civil War was going on, Randolph created his detachment of an all-black regiment, and they went out down there and was giving them crackers hell on the battlefield, like killing mad at them, you know. So again, this guy was a doctor, he was an occultist, he was a medium, he was a writer, he was a spiritualist, he was a soldier, okay? He was a translator, and a teacher. All by, I think he's like maybe 30 at this age now. He done all of this stuff. So he gets all of this stuff popping, and right around the time of the Civil War, when it started really getting hot for Lincoln, he got approached by another guy who was friends with the Duke of Italy. I believe he was Charles III, Charles Napoleon. But whoever the guy was, he was descended from Napoleon. He was like Napoleon's like great-grandson or something. And this guy was deeply impressed with Randolph. And Randolph, who had traveled in a lot amongst the spiritual circles at the time, there were like a bunch of different people that were doing spiritualism at the time. There was a guy named John Murray Spear, right? He existed between, let's say, 1804 and 1887. He was really big with getting people to go up on like different type of rituals to get into the spirit world, because the ritual was the way that the spirits identify with the purpose of the practitioner. So he was really into that. There was another guy, there was a woman, I forget her name though, and she was really big. It'll come to me. But she was a Caucasian woman, but she was really deep in spiritualism. This is way before Blavatsky. Anyway, he decided, after he did his little tour in the war and he seen that the Freedom Bureau was coming to kind of a close, a climax, he decided to wait out the rest of the war. So while Lincoln was going through all his changes or whatever and going through his great bouts of depression, Randolph was his spiritual advisor and guide to help him get up out of that type of stuff. So a lot of the things that Lincoln was doing, at certain points people would say that Lincoln and Randolph were attached to the hip. And a lot of the crackers that were dealing with their little fake occultism shit didn't want Lincoln to be down with that, because they knew that this was going to keep them from further invaginating themselves into the infrastructure of what we now today call American life. So Randolph basically decided to be like, you know, almost like his spiritual guru. And he became that for a bunch of different people that was around at the time. Rockefeller sought him out, you know, from Standard Oil. What's his name? Elihu Yale. You know, he was kind of on his joint too. The dude who set up the Skull and Bones thing. I'm sorry, I thought I heard Indian drums.
You did.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So while this is going on, Randolph gets invited to do another tour of Europe. So he says, cool, I'm going to do it. So right when he bounced, that's when they killed Lincoln. And once they killed Lincoln, that's when Hannibal basically became president. But then they basically got him out of there because he was way too dark. And then they tried to get other people in to follow suit. So while he was on tour in Europe, this is when he basically met one of the grandmasters of the Rosicrucians at the time. And this grandmaster was so impressed by him, the fact that Randolph was what we would consider an adept. An adept is somebody who doesn't have to get initiated. A lot of people think when you deal with the occult or masonry or Freemasonry that you got to be initiated into doing that. Now, there's two types of initiation. There's the initiation of the entered apprentice, and then there's the initiation of the adept. The adept does not have to be initiated by anybody else because he is initiated by his life experience. The entered apprentice initiation is those people that feel that they have to go through and be initiated by another man to allow them to receive knowledge in the form of degrees. Now, Randolph was an adept who chose to go through the initiation. So therefore he was both. So he was a Moor who was a Mason, and a Mason who was a Moor. It was basically all the same thing. So when he got initiated into that, he wound up going on a deeper tour and started getting into what they call the Aseeric mysteries. And the Aseeric mysteries is dealing with a lot of sex magic. So as he started dealing with the Aseeric mysteries, he also got involved in another sect called the Nusari. And the Nusarian sect that comes out of Syria, as well as now Syria, Persia. Well, let's call it by the real names. Persis, which is Persia. Aseer, which is Syria. Misraim, which is Egypt. Manoah, which is now, or Ionia, which is now Greece. Havilah, which is now Arabia. Albion, which is now England or London, and Andalus, which is now Spain and Italy,
really
which is now Spain.
Really
so he did this whole big tour, and his magic game elevated 150% to the point where people started being afraid of him. And the more lectures he would get, the more people would come. And so now he started writing books. He wrote a couple of books. He wrote one of the best ones, I would think, is this one. It's called Death and the Disembodiment of Man. It's an excellent, excellent, excellent book. This book is actually where a lot of the modern day New Age books about death and reincarnation, the Celestine prophecy and all of that crap, all of that comes from this type of stuff, from him. As we're talking, we're seeing an example of the destruction of our people. We're seeing a brother walking with this real unattractive Caucasoid woman. But as we're building on that, all of these New Age transcendental books and all of this stuff comes from basically the stuff that he put down. So he was then brought forth to the Great Dome in France and was actually